President Trump used his trip to Europe to enrich himself as calls for his impeachment grew louder. For more on this, it's time for a closer look. President Trump is back in the U.S., fresh off his European tour of doing and saying dumb things in important places. Whenever Trump goes abroad, it's like seeing all the worst habits of American tourists rolled into one person. The only thing he didn't do was show up to the Louvre in sandals and Mickey ears holding a McFlurry. This trip was no exception. Trump once again brought his signature weirdness to some of the world's most famous landmarks. He gave the Queen another one of his clammy handshakes. He went to Buckingham Palace to reenact a scene from the movie Tommy Boy. And he tried on a Winston Churchill-style bowler hat during an interview on British television. You know, it's pretty obvious that British reporters just like to make him do things to make him look silly. Like, right, now try on this hat. And now dance with the hat on. And now give us a little twirl, give us a little twirl. Now you look fancy. You know, I never thought I'd say this, but your hair looks better than you in a hat. You don't look like Winston Churchill, you look like Dick Tracy minus the Tracy. Of course, one of the biggest highlights of Trump's trip was his stop at Normandy to commemorate the 75th anniversary of D-Day. Now, during his prepared remarks, Trump stayed on script, and it was a moving and solemn tribute. Afterwards, however, in an unscripted meeting with French President Emmanuel Macron, Trump tried to describe in his own terms the historical significance of Normandy, and he was a little less specific.
This was a very special day, and I want to thank you for inviting me. This was something that was, we read about it all our lives, Normandy. And there are those that say it was the most important ever, not just at that time, but ever. But it's a very special place. It's an amazing place, and it's somewhere when you think of those places of great importance, this is certainly one of the top. In the eyes of some, it's the top because of what it meant in terms of the turnaround of a very, very bad situation. That was the big turn.
I love how the camera pulls back like it's trying to see if there's someone else in the room who knows what the is going on. Like, I mean, he sounds like he's doing voiceover for the History Channel, but then he spilled coffee on his script. And then there was Trump's trip to Ireland, where he met with the Irish Prime Minister and discussed the impact of Brexit on the border between Ireland, an independent republic, and Northern Ireland, which is part of the UK. Right now, there's an open border there. The absolute last thing anyone wants there is a wall. So naturally, Trump said something about having a wall there, a comment that was so dumb the Prime Minister of Ireland had to correct him.
I think that'll all work out. It'll all work out very well, and also for you with your wall, your border. I mean, we have a border situation in the United States, and you have one over here. But I hear it's going to work out very well. I think it's both going to work out well. It's going to work out very well here.
The main thing you want to avoid, of course, is the border or wall between.
No, I think you do. I think you do. The way it works now is good. You want to try and keep it that way.
I love when Trump pretends he knew the right answer the whole time. You need a wall. We don't want a wall. No, yeah, you don't. No. No, I knew that. I was testing you. You passed. Congratulations. You passed. I'm smart, and you passed. Seriously, this guy is unbelievable. These countries are in the middle of an extremely delicate diplomatic situation involving a landmark peace accord that ended decades of sectarian conflict. And Trump just bursts in and immediately says the wrong thing. He's the Kramer of international diplomacy. But Trump didn't just go to Ireland. Trump didn't just go to Ireland to make Brexit bloopers. He also went there to enrich himself on the taxpayers' dime by staying at yet another one of his personal properties, a golf course he owns in Ireland called Doonbeg. In fact, Huffington Post reported that the trip to his golf course in Ireland added at least another $3.6 million to a taxpayer-funded golf tab that totals nearly $106 million in just 2.5 years. And the resort in Ireland even began posting video of Trump's arrival aboard Marine One and of him teeing off the first green in its promotional material. And on top of that, they charged us for the hat. Trump also toted his weird adult sons around with him, even though They don't work for the government, and they run the family business, which is supposed to be independent from the White House. They were even posting Instagram photos from the trip, like this shot Don Jr. posted from Buckingham Palace. Once again, why do these guys stand like such weirdos? Did he forget to take the hanger out of his jacket? He's like an alien who crash landed on Earth and learned how to stand up straight by looking at a Ken doll. I've seen dogs that look more natural standing on their hind legs. Even if you put aside the 400-page Mueller report and the mountains of evidence that Trump obstructed justice, Trump's self-dealing should be a huge scandal. The president is enriching himself on the taxpayers' dime and mixing his personal business with the government. Compare that to previous presidents who went to great lengths to separate themselves from their businesses in order to avoid even the appearance of a conflict of interest.
Jimmy Carter famously put his peanut farm into a blind trust to avoid any suggestion that he might ever implement a policy that would benefit himself financially.
Jimmy Carter put his peanut farm in a blind trust. Can you imagine if Trump had a peanut farm? He'd be holding rallies there and selling jars of peanut butter with the presidential seal on them. I mean, he already looks like a peanut company mascot. If you ask Trump if the border wall will be made of steel or concrete, he'd say we're making the wall out of
Peanuts!
In many ways, this is all part of the same story with Trump. Whether it's his self-dealing or the 400 pages of evidence in the Mueller report, Trump's main interest is always enriching himself. And now there's increasing pressure from Democrats in Congress in running for president to begin impeachment hearings. Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren made her case for impeachment again during a town hall last week.
Do you believe still that impeachment is the right path forward, and why or why not?
Yes, I do. The Mueller report came out, and the afternoon it came out, I sat down and started reading it. And I read it all afternoon, and I read it all night, and I read it into the next morning, all 448 pages. Donald Trump, as president, delayed, deflected, moved, fired, and did everything he could to obstruct justice. If he were any other person in the United States, based on what's documented in that report, he would be carried out in handcuffs. Now,
I love that she said Trump would be carried out because you know that's how they'd have to do it. If the feds ever came for Trump, he'd lie down on the floor like a kid who doesn't want to go to school. And they'd have to lift him out with a crane like when they transfer beluga whales at SeaWorld. Where are you gonna set me down? And yet, in the face of these increasing calls for impeachment, some Democratic leaders in the House, and in particular House Speaker Nancy Pelosi, have been resistant. Last week, Pelosi tried to mollify calls for impeachment by saying she'd rather see Trump in jail.
House Speaker Nancy Pelosi escalating her war of words against the president. Politico reporting that during a meeting Tuesday, she was pressed by Judiciary Committee Chairman Jerry Nadler to start impeachment proceedings. NBC News has learned from a congressional source in the room, Pelosi then said about the president, "I don't want to see him impeached. I want to see him in prison."
What does that mean? If you think there's enough evidence to put him in jail, then there's enough evidence for him to lose his job. If you caught an employee stealing cash from the register, you wouldn't say, "You'll go to jail for this, but until that day, I'll see you at the company picnic." No, it will not shock you to learn that after that comment, Trump and his allies lashed out at Pelosi. First, Trump himself attacked her in a series of tweets and an interview on Fox News.
Nervous Nancy Pelosi is a disgrace to herself and her family for having made such a disgusting statement, especially since I was with foreign leaders overseas.
I think she's a disgrace. I actually don't think she's a talented person. She's a nasty, vindictive, horrible person. But Nancy Pelosi, I call her Nervous Nancy. Nancy Pelosi's a disaster. And she made a statement. It was a horrible,
When you were
nasty,
overseas.
vicious statement while I'm overseas. Now, if I made any statement about anybody, it would be like a big head. Why would he do that when he's overseas?
You're doing it right now. You just did it. Trump does this weird thing where he predicts headlines as he's making those headlines. He's like a local news reporter holding a match and a bottle of kerosene over a graphic that says "House fire in the Bronx, more at 11." Also, you call her Nervous Nancy? You sweat like a high school sophomore who crapped his pants in math class and just got called to the chalkboard. Then there was Trump booster Sean Hannity, who, without a hint of irony, claimed Pelosi had gone too far by calling for Trump to be jailed.
Speaker Pelosi now apparently telling senior Democrats she'd like to see Trump behind bars. Based on no actual crime, she wants a political opponent locked up in prison. That happens in banana republics. Beyond despicable behavior.
Hey, man. Where were you during all those lock her up chants? Oh, right, you were at those rallies. I mean, look at these two. This looks like the end of one of those fundraisers where they auction off a date with two bachelors nobody wants to bid on. $10, $5, I'll wear my tiny tuxedo. Impeachment will give Democrats the opportunity to marshal all the evidence against Trump in public and tell a story about his corruption that ties everything together. Because right now, Trump is obstructing and stonewalling Congress on almost every front. All he's giving them is...
Peanuts!
This is a closer look.